Did Abraham really almost lose his son?
Chapter 1. From Her to the Call of Heaven. A gentle breeze swept across the desolate land of Mesopotamia, where the sun scorched the cracked earth with relentless heat. Once the cradle of civilization, this land had birthed mighty kings and towering cities, but had also forgotten the Creator, who had made them. It had been nearly 250 years since the Tower of Babel had crumbled, an emblem of humanity's arrogance and confusion. Language had scattered, nations had formed, and people had drifted further and further from God. In the great city of Ur, nestled near the lower Euphrates, idols of wood and stone stood tall. The people knelt before them, praying to gods fashioned by their own hands, gods that could not speak, could not hear, and could not save. In the heart of Ur lived a man named Terah, gentle and wise. On a morning shrouded in mist, he cradled his newborn son and looked at him with eyes full of hope. He named him Abram, which meant exalted father. No one could have imagined that this child would one day become the pillar of faith for nations, the cornerstone of a divine promise stretching through the ages. Years passed, and Abram grew into a thoughtful, resilient man. He married Sarai, a kind and graceful woman who, despite her many virtues, was unable to bear children. Abram often watched the stars in the quiet of night, his heart stirred by questions too big for the human mind. He could not understand why his people bowed to lifeless statues, why they sought truth from carved images that had no breath. One night, under the vast canopy of stars, as Abram stood in silence, a voice pierced the stillness. It was not the voice of a man, nor of the wind, but something deeper, stronger, clear as light and soft as breath. Abram, it said, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse whoever curses you. Through you, all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. A chill ran down Abram's spine. He saw no vision. There were no flashes of lightning or angels with flaming swords, only a voice, yet it carried the weight of eternity. He didn't ask why or where. He simply believed. A fire of faith had been lit in his soul, small but steady, and it would never go out. The next morning, before the sky had turned blue, Abram told Sarai, we must go. The Lord has spoken to me. Sarai looked into his eyes. No fear, no doubt, only trust. Alongside them was Lot, Abram's nephew, whose father had died long ago. Abram had raised him like a son. Together with their herdsmen, livestock, and servants, they began a journey with no map and no clear destination, only a promise. They left her behind the wealth, the security, the familiar. They traveled west and north, across barren plains and sunburnt hills. They camped under the stars, moved with the seasons, and finally reached a bustling city named Haran. There, Terah, old and weary, passed away. Abram mourned his father, but the voice still echoed in his heart, go to the land I will show you. After a time, Abram took his family, their possessions, and moved south deeper into the land of Canaan. When they reached the great tree of Morah at Shechem, the voice returned, to your offspring, the Lord said, I will give this land. Abram built an altar there. It was not a grand temple, just stones stacked in reverence, but it was enough. It marked a moment in history when heaven reached down and claimed a piece of earth for a future not yet seen. He continued south, setting up camp between Bethel and Ai. There he built another altar, calling on the name of the Lord. Step by step, Abram moved through the land, sowing seeds of faith wherever he went. But soon hardship came. A famine swept through Canaan. The ground turned to dust, grass withered, wells dried. Abram, now a shepherd of great wealth, was forced to lead his people toward Egypt, a land known for its bounty and the Nile's generous flow. As they neared Egypt, a new fear took root in Abram's heart. Sarai was beautiful, even in her old age. If the Egyptians saw her, they might kill him to take her for themselves. He turned to his wife and said, please, tell them you are my sister, so they will treat me well for your sake. They might let me live. Sarai, again, did not protest. She trusted her husband even in this. When they arrived, Abram's fears were confirmed. The Egyptians noticed Sarai, and word reached Pharaoh himself. She was taken into the palace, and Abram was showered with gifts, livestock, silver, servants. He had what appeared to be success, but at a terrible cost. Then the Lord struck Pharaoh's household with severe plagues. The king summoned Abram in fury. "Why did you lie to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Take her and go." Ashamed, Abram left Egypt with Sarai, Lot, and all the wealth he had gained. But now he understood. Security and blessing did not come from human schemes, but from trust in the one who called him. He returned to Canaan, to the altars he had built, and fell on his knees. In that moment, the journey truly began, not just of body, but of spirit. A man who left everything behind now walked with God, one step at a time, toward a future no one else could yet see. Chapter 2, The Promise and the Parting. The sun broke across the sky, painting the plains of southern Canaan in gold. After their exile from Egypt, Abram, Sarai, and Lot returned to the land of promise. Wealthier than ever, flocks grazed as far as the eye could see. Tents dotted the hillsides like stars scattered across a desert night. Servants bustled with food, water, firewood. It seemed for a moment that God's promise had already begun to unfold. They journeyed back to the hill country between Bethel and Ai, where Abram had built an altar years before. There he knelt once more, calling on the name of the Lord. But the peace of prayer was soon drowned out by the sounds of quarreling. The herdsmen of Abram and Lot were at each other's throats, arguing over grazing lands, over wells, over space. Abram listened to the growing unrest and knew this could not continue. He took Lot aside and led him to a ridge overlooking the vast landscape. The morning breeze rustled their robes as Abram turned to his nephew with fatherly calm. "Let there be no conflict between you and me, or between our herdsmen," he said. "We're family. Look around you, this whole land stretches before us. You choose first. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left." Lot looked out at the fertile Jordan Valley. It gleamed in the distance like a green ribbon curling through a desert of brown. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah glittered with promise. The valley reminded him of Egypt, lush, alluring, and full of opportunity. Without hesitation, Lot chose the east, so they parted ways. Lot set off toward the cities of the plain, pitching his tents near Sodom. Abram stayed in Canaan, settling among the oaks of Mamre and Hebron. There he built another altar to the Lord, a sign that though his land was less fertile, his heart remained rich in faith. As Lot disappeared into the horizon, the Lord spoke again. "Lift your eyes, Abram. Look north and south, east and west. All the land you see I will give it to you and your offspring forever. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, too many to count. Walk through the land, for I have given it to you." Encouraged, Abram walked its breadth and width, stepping not just through dirt and rock, but through the future God had promised. But the peace wouldn't last. In the Jordan Valley, political unrest stirred. For kings from the east, mighty rulers from Elam, Shinar, Elzar, and Goyim formed an alliance and launched a sweeping campaign to dominate the region. 5 kings from the west, including those of Sodom and Gomorrah, united in defense. Their armies clashed in the valley of Siddim. The battle was swift and brutal. The eastern kings overwhelmed their enemies, plundered the cities, and captured many people, including Lot and his household. A survivor escaped the carnage and fled to Hebron, breathless and bloody, to tell Abram what had happened. The moment Abram heard his nephew's name, his heart burned with resolve. Lot had made his choice, but he was still family. Without delay, Abram summoned 318 trained men from his household, men he had raised and prepared for such a moment. They traveled under the cover of night, pursuing the enemy as far as Dan. At dawn, they launched a surprise attack. The enemy scattered. Abram and his men drove them as far as Damascus, striking down their captors, recovering Lot, his family, and all their possessions. It was a stunning victory. As they returned, weary but triumphant, 2 kings came to meet Abram in the valley of Sheva. The first was Melchizedek, king of Salem, a man cloaked in mystery. He brought bread and wine and blessed Abram. "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hands." Abram bowed his head. In awe and gratitude, he gave Melchizedek 1/10 of everything he had won. A quiet, but profound act of worship. The second king was very different. Bera, king of Sodom, came with offers and demands. "Give me the people," he said. "You can keep the goods." But Abram refused. "I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. I will not take a thread or sandal strap from you. I will not let you say, 'I made Abram rich.'" He handed back the spoils, taking nothing except a share for the men who had fought with him. That night, Abram stood alone under the stars, exhausted but unwavering. The voice of the Lord returned, quiet and clear. "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." Abram looked to heaven. "But Lord," he said, "what can you give me, since I remain childless? Eliezer of Damascus will inherit everything I own." Then the Lord brought him outside and pointed to the night sky. "Look up and count the stars if you can. So shall your descendants be." And Abram believed. That belief, simple, raw, and resolute, was credited to him as righteousness. It was not about perfection. It was about trust. God had found a man willing to walk by faith, and that man would become the father of nations. Chapter 3. The Dream and the Doubt. Years had passed since the Lord first promised Abram descendants as countless as the dust of the earth. Yet Abram and Sarai remained childless. They were no longer in the spring of life. Sarai's hair had grayed, her body weary. Abram was nearing 100. The dream God had given him now felt more like a fading whisper than a blazing fire. And still, he waited. One night, beneath the weight of his uncertainty, Abram slipped into a deep sleep. In that darkness, God came to him not with comfort, but with a troubling vision. A heavy dread fell over Abram as the voice of the Lord echoed through the silence. "Know this, your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, but I will bring judgment on the nation that enslaves them. And afterward, they will come out with great possessions." Abram stirred uneasily. The path ahead sounded grim, but God was not done. "You, Abram, will go to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age, but your offspring, I will give them this land." As the dream faded and Abram awoke, a strange peace settled in his chest. The future might be painful, but it was certain. God was in control. Still, as the days went on and Sarai's womb remained silent, doubt crept in once more, not just in Abram's heart, but Sarai's. One afternoon, she sat beside Abram and spoke with quiet resolve. "The Lord has kept me from having children. Perhaps you should go to Hagar." Hagar was Sarai's Egyptian servant, young and strong. Sarai's voice trembled with a mix of pain and practicality. "Sleep with her. Maybe I can build a family through her." Abram hesitated. It felt wrong, but it made sense. In their culture, this kind of arrangement wasn't unheard of. But the ache in Sarai's eyes pierced him deeper than logic ever could. And so, he agreed. Hagar conceived quickly, and almost immediately, the harmony in Abram's household began to unravel. Hagar looked at Sarai with disdain, her once humble demeanor now tinted with pride. Sarai, wounded and humiliated, lashed out. She treated Hagar harshly, and soon the young woman fled pregnant and alone into the wilderness. There, in the dry heat of the desert, Hagar collapsed beneath a bush, tears streaking down her dust-covered cheeks. But even in her exile, she was not abandoned. An angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from? And where are you going?" "I'm running away," she whispered. "Go back," the angel said gently. "Submit to your mistress. I will increase your descendants so much they will be too numerous to count." Then came the promise, "You will give birth to a son. Name him Ishmael. God hears, because the Lord has heard your misery." Hagar's eyes widened with awe. She named the place Bir-lahai-roi, the well of the living one who sees me. With strength renewed, she returned. She bore Abram a son, and he named him Ishmael. Abram was 80-6. For 13 years, Ishmael grew into a bold young man, strong-willed, quick to speak. He was Abram's pride, but not the child of the promise. When Abram was 99, the Lord appeared once again. This time, not in a vision, but in presence. "I am God Almighty," he declared. "Walk before me and be blameless. I will confirm my covenant with you and greatly increase your numbers." Abram fell face down. And then God changed everything. "No longer will you be called Abram," he said. "Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will bless you. Kings will come from you. And this will be the sign of the covenant between us. Every male among you shall be circumcised." Abraham flinched at the weight of that command, but he obeyed. That very day, he circumcised every male in his household, including himself and 13-year-old Ishmael. But God wasn't finished. "Sarai, your wife, she will no longer be Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and give you a son by her." Abraham laughed not in mockery, but in amazement. Will a man 100 years old have a child? Will Sarah, at 90, give birth? He tried to offer Ishmael to God instead. If only Ishmael might live under your blessing. But the answer was firm. "No, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will name him Isaac." Isaac. Laughter. It was the child of the impossible, the child of the promise. And as Abraham sat in his tent that night, his body aching from obedience, his heart dared to hope again. God had not forgotten. The dream was still alive. Chapter 4. The child of the promise. The desert sun rose gently over the hills of Mamre, casting long shadows over the tents of Abraham's household. Life had changed. The old man, now nearly 100, moved more slowly, but there was something new in his step, a quiet, burning hope. Sarah had laughed when she heard the promise, laughed because it seemed absurd. But her laughter had shifted from disbelief to wonder, because now, within her, something stirred, something impossible. She was pregnant. No one in the camp could quite comprehend it. The once barren wife of Abraham, now in the final season of life, was carrying a child. Servants whispered, visitors stared, and Sarah, once ashamed and sorrowful, now walked with her head held high. In time, the child was born, a healthy, squirming baby boy. Abraham held him in trembling arms, tears streaking down his cheeks. Sarah, smiling through joyful sobs, named him Isaac. Laughter. "God has brought me laughter," she said, "and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet here I am, giving my husband a son in his old age. The whole camp rejoiced. Abraham, ever faithful, threw a great feast on the day Isaac was weaned. There was music and dancing, laughter and song. It felt as though heaven had drawn near. And yet, even in that joy, tension brewed. From a distance, Ishmael, now a teenager, watched the celebration. He was Sarah's son only by extension, born through Hagar, her Egyptian servant. And though Abraham loved Ishmael, the young man began to mock Isaac. It started as little jokes, but the sarcasm in his tone cut deep. Sarah saw it. She approached Abraham with fierce resolve. "Get rid of that slave woman and her son," she said. "That boy will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Abraham was torn. Ishmael was his blood, his firstborn. He had taught him to ride, to build, to pray. He had watched him grow into a proud, stubborn youth. How could he cast him out? But that night, God spoke to Abraham in his anguish. "Do not be distressed about the boy or the servant. Listen to Sarah. Your legacy will come through Isaac. But I will also make Ishmael into a great nation, because he is your son." So at dawn, Abraham rose. He packed bread and water, placed them on Hagar's shoulders, and handed her Ishmael. It was not a moment of anger, but of sorrow and obedience. Hagar wandered into the wilderness of Beersheba, where the water soon ran dry. Weak and desperate, she placed her son beneath a bush and stepped away, unable to bear watching him die. She wept alone. But then a familiar voice called out from heaven, "Hagar, what troubles you? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. Lift him up, take him by the hand. I will make him into a great nation." And there, before her, appeared a well. She filled the skin with water, gave it to Ishmael, and watched him revive. God was with them. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness of Paran. He became a skilled archer, independent and strong. Later, his mother found him a wife from Egypt, and through him, 12 sons were born, princes who would father many tribes. Back in Mamre, Abraham raised Isaac with tenderness and reverence. The boy grew in wisdom and grace. Every morning, he would walk with his father. They spoke of the stars, of sheep and altars, of the God who gives and keeps his word. Abraham had peace. He had his son, his promise, and his God. Then one day, King Abimelech of the Philistines came to visit, accompanied by his army commander Phicol. They stood at Abraham's camp with a surprising request. "God is with you in everything you do." Abimelech said, "Swear to me here, before God, that you'll not deal falsely with me or my descendants. Let there be peace between us." Abraham agreed. But first, he brought up a matter of injustice. Abimelech's servants had seized a well that belonged to Abraham's men. The king apologized he had no knowledge of it, and they resolved the issue. Abraham then took 7 lambs and gave them to Abimelech. "Accept these," he said, "as a witness that I dug this well." So the 2 men made a treaty at Beersheba, the well of the oath, and there Abraham planted a tamarisk tree and called upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God. It was a sign of peace and permanence, of rootedness in the land God had promised. Life settled again. Isaac grew stronger. The household flourished. Abraham watched the sun rise and set with a heart full of thanksgiving. But deep within, he knew his story was not yet finished. One final test would come, more severe than any before. The God who gave Isaac would one day ask for him back, and Abraham, the man of faith, would have to decide once more if he trusted the voice that called him from Ur, led him through famine, brought him riches and battles, promises and peace. Would he still follow, even when the cost was unthinkable? Chapter 5, the final test and the everlasting covenant. The hills of Mamre were quiet in the early morning, blanketed in soft mist and golden light. Abraham sat outside his tent, watching his son Isaac sleep. The boy, now a youth, was strong and curious, always asking questions about God, about stars, about purpose. Abraham loved him more than words could say. Isaac was the miracle he had waited a lifetime for, the living, breathing promise of God. But that promise was about to be tested in a way Abraham could never have imagined. One morning, the familiar voice of the Lord returned, not soft this time, but direct and piercing. "Abraham, here I am," he answered. "Take your son," God said, "your only son, Isaac, whom you love. Go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Time seemed to stop. The silence that followed was deafening. Abraham didn't argue. He didn't plead. He didn't ask for a reason. He simply obeyed. That was his way. He had walked with God long enough to know that obedience came before understanding. The next morning, Abraham rose early. He chopped wood for the offering, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his servants along with Isaac. For 3 days, they traveled in silence. Every step was heavier than the last. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the mountain in the distance. He turned to his servants. "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship. Then we will return." Then he placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's back. He carried the fire and the knife. As they climbed, Isaac looked at his father and asked, "Father?" "Yes, my son. The fire and wood are here. But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham swallowed hard. "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." When they reached the top, Abraham built an altar, stacked the wood, and turned to Isaac. The boy understood. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. Abraham bound him, placed him gently on the altar, and raised the knife. His hand trembled. Then came the voice from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, here I am. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up. Behind him, caught in a thicket, was a ram. He took the ram and sacrificed it in place of Isaac. And he named that place Jehovah-Jireh, the Lord will provide. The angel of the Lord called again from heaven, "Because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that I will bless you abundantly. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as the sand on the seashore. Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you obeyed me." Abraham and Isaac returned down the mountain. No words were spoken. None were needed. They had both seen God provide. And in that silence, something eternal was sealed. Years passed. Sarah died at the age of 127. Abraham mourned her deeply and buried her in the cave of Machpelah. a field he purchased at full price from the Hittites. He insisted on paying, so there would never be any doubt this land belonged to his family forever. Later, Abraham took another wife, Keturah, and had many more children. But Isaac remained the child of the covenant. At the age of 175, Abraham breathed his last breath. He died full of days and full of faith. Isaac and Ishmael, once separated by pain and distance, reunited to bury their father next to Sarah. They stood together over the grave of the man who had walked with God, who had believed the impossible, and whose faith had changed the world. Abraham's story echoed far beyond the hills of Canaan. From him came nations, kings, prophets, and eventually, a man who would be known as the Lamb of God. One day, on a hill not far from Moriah, another only son would carry wood on his back, ascend a mountain, and offer himself. But there would be no ram that day. And through his sacrifice, the promise to Abraham would be fulfilled not just for one nation, but for all who believe. The God of Abraham had not just provided, he had become the provision.